Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Jonathan Caravolius of Roeq, and you're listening to the New Warehouse Podcast. Today's safety tip is buy safe robots and ensure employee safety at all times.
With e-commerce off the charts, many small and growing warehouses are asking, how can I get ahead when my warehouse is barely keeping up? The answer is future-ready warehouse tech from Zebra Technologies. Warehouses can simplify and upgrade all processes, from automated inventory management to hands-free picking, with Zebra's tailored, scalable mobile solutions. They're simple and intuitive. There's never been a better time to upgrade for success with Zebra. How can your warehouse get ahead? The answer's in black and white. Get the answers at zebra.com/theanswer. That's zebra.com/theanswer. Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawn with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. On today's episode, I am going to be joined by Jonathan Caravolius. He is the head of sales for the U.S. at Roeq, which is a robotics equipment company that's providing accessories essentially for robots, such as the Mir robots, and making them more capable of doing more things and giving you more functionality overall. So he's going to tell us about Roeq and what it is exactly they do and kind of, how they got into this business. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some of their newest offerings and how they're really helping to increase the overall functionality of some robots that are out there in the market. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you very much. And looking forward and appreciate being able to, be a part of it.
Definitely happy to have you on and definitely happy to be learning more about Roeq and kind of what it is you guys do. So why don't you tell us, from your perspective and I guess Roeq's perspective, what is it that you guys really do?
Yeah, no worries. Well, I think in a nutshell, what we do is we basically produce what we call mobile robotic equipment. Sounds really high tech and wonderful.
Very technical.
But, you've got a lot of robots that are starting to crawl around these warehouses and move from point A to point B in those warehouses. And what basically Roeq does is we give them the equipment to make them actually do things for the logistics purposes that they should be doing. Not just moving from point A to point B, but actually engaging with operators, moving carts, moving pallets, rolling boxes from one conveyor to another. That's what basically Roeq enables. We're basically the eyes and the limbs of those mobile robots that are moving around those factories. So that in a nutshell is what we do.
Interesting. I like that. The eyes and the limbs of the robots. It's pretty interesting. And so you guys are essentially, you gave it the technical name, but you're providing these kind of attachments in a sense to the robots, right? And you're kind of increasing the functionality of them. But I'm curious, from the perspective of, robots in the warehouse not being very old. It's not a very old concept or something that's been around for a very long time. So I'm curious of kind of the origin stories of Roeq, and how did someone who, I guess, founded Roeq come up with the idea to create these attachments? Because I think a lot of people were more on the sense of like, oh, like robotics is going to be happening, so let's create our own robots. But you guys took the different approach of like, let's make other people's robots better. So, so how did that kind of come about, and what really sparked that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, a little bit of the background of Roeq. I mean, we're a Danish company, and Denmark is a very interesting country because it's basically become almost like the Silicon Valley, or we call it the robotic valley for robot development.
Really? Interesting.
And of course, the companies, some of the companies that have come out of there, like Universal Robots, which are well known in the industry, and of course MIR, mobile autonomous, industrial robots. That's actually where the core, robot application that we're dealing with. Basically, it's a robot that moves on a warehouse floor from point A to point B. More in an industrial warehouse. And one of our founders actually worked for MIR at the time. He was actually a mechanical engineer. So MIR's primary job is to create this robot platform. That's all it is. All right. And it basically has to navigate from A to B using, it's an autonomous robot. A little bit of the background. They used to have AGVs, which are automated guided vehicles, which basically they had like a track that drove around. So, you basically had that. And Michael, who is the mechanical engineer who worked for there, actually had a good idea one day. He said, why don't we put like a conveyor on top of there so we can basically move a packet from a stationary conveyor to another thing? Well, his boss has said, that's really great idea, but that's not our core business. Our business is to make a AMR to move from one point to one big. But they basically told him, hey, if you want to develop this and do this, no problem, start a company and do it. And that's essentially what happened. That's actually was a spark that created Roeq. And, Michael, who tells me the story, he was still working for MIR for that time. But he started Roeq as a side hustle, almost like, hey, I'm going to build this top module on top of this robot to convey things. And he got a couple of, buddies that used to work in, engineering to kind of buy into his idea. And that was like the spark that kind of set it off. So he still worked for MIR at the time. And then his buddies basically started the company of Roeq. And of course, the synergy was there with MIR. Yeah. So they basically developed, the first projects, adding these top modules on there to enable the MIR robot to do different tasks in the warehouse environment. And that's kind of like the fusion of what basically happened. And basically, this started pretty much 2016, where MIR had a project and said, hey, Roeq, can you solve this problem? And it was basically that conveyor application that I'm talking about, moving a box from a stationary conveyor to an AMR with a conveyor on top of it, and then go to another stationary thing and drop it off. Yeah. That's it. Like any great idea, it starts with a project, a problem that had to be solved.
Very interesting, and I love that MIR kind of like gave him the green light, like just like go take this thing and do it. So pretty cool side hustle, I must say. My side hustle is just speaking into a microphone here, but so
it all starts with a side hustle sometimes.
yeah, definitely. So a very interesting origin story. I mean, and it makes total sense why you guys obviously are tied in closely with MIR and why you're building out these different solutions for them. And I love that it was a problem essentially that MIR needed to solve for a customer, and they kind of came in and you guys took care of it and solved the solution and created this conveyor attachment basically, which is pretty cool. I saw some pictures and videos of it, and it's a very interesting idea. It's very kind of simple idea in a sense, but it takes someone to think about it and really think it out and put pen to paper to make it happen. So I'm curious, how do typically, because we're going to talk a little bit about some of the new solutions you guys have in a little bit, but before we get there, how does Roeq really start to think about what solutions to develop next and what makes sense to pursue?
We'll be back after a quick break. You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, our core business is pretty much standard solutions. I mean, we're not a custom builder at all. We don't go in there and say, oh, what, for example, in a warehouse, hey, what is your kind of, problem? I'll solve it right there. We're kind of trying to do, a standard solution that can be scaled into a lot of different applications out there, and if you look at our portfolio, that's what you kind of see is things that you can imagine being realized in your warehouse. Where you could actually integrate it, and the customers get it too. They're like, oh yeah, I got that same problem in my factory or my warehouse. This is what I have to do, and that's the core essence of what Roeq's trying to do. I mean, there's a lot of great customized companies out there. They solve exact problems that a specific warehouse has, and they do a great job of it. And I work with a lot of those, but that's not our world. So we have the core basically starts just like I told you. It's a problem that a customer has, and then we try to solve it in a more standardized solution that can be repeated over and over. And I'll give you a quick thing. We have a product called the GuardCom, and it's basically the problem was it basically is a safe transfer from a stationary conveyor to one of the conveyor systems I told you about on the AMR. Yeah. And the problem that a customer was having was, a lot of these things get docked using Wi-Fi, but the problem is in some parts of the factory or warehouse, Wi-Fi isn't that strong. Like in your own house, you have like weak spots and strong spots. Yeah. And it's not a stable connection. And that's basically what tells, the stationary conveyor to say, offload this onto the AMR. Well, if it's weak and you get a bad signal, you're going to be offloading into nothing. And it'll drop on the floor, which is what nobody wants. So our GuardCom system is basically, it basically has two systems where it basically the mirror with the AMR, the conveyor drives up to the stationary conveyor, and there's basically an optical sensor which basically sees when it comes up there and basically creates the handoff using an optical sensor, and it allows a safe transfer of those goods over to the AMR. And it was a problem that customer had, and we solved it with this solution, and now we're using that same solution in a variety of applications that are out there. And it's something that can be repeated, and that's kind of our kind of thought process. We don't go in there saying, oh, I'm going to solve this one. We go in there saying we'll solve this problem, and we think this can be marketed to a broader base.
Very interesting. So and I'm familiar with some, like the other side, places that are making customized solutions like to their customer or the unique problem. But I love that you guys are trying to scale it in a sense and really make sure that it's something that can be a solution for many, many different operations. And I think that's incredibly smart. And I think, one thing for sure, I think that, learned in this industry, is that you can learn so much from other people who are doing the same types of things in operations, warehousing, logistics. And, even if it's a totally different industry and different product that you're selling, there's still so many similarities and so many similar issues as well. So it's good that you guys are looking to tackle those problems and try to solve them for people. And, the simple solution, like you said, that optical sensor, keep stuff from just falling off onto the floor makes total sense. It's like a little handshake between the two conveyors, I guess, giving them the high sign to pass it on, right? So very interesting stuff, and I love that you guys are solving for the problem of the customer, and it makes total sense. So let's talk a little bit about the new solutions that you guys have recently rolled out, and I'm curious about the first one is with the TMS C1500. And so this is going on a Mir robot, right? But what it's doing is, Mir has different levels of payload that they can offer. But this is essentially taking a Mir robot and and increasing its payload in a way. So tell us a little bit about that, what it actually is, and how that works.
Sure. So it's basically the TMS C1500. It's a top module that goes onto the Mir 500, and it goes all the way up to the newest 1350. So just a quick thing about the Mirs. Mir has, when they say a Mir 250, it's basically the robot model and how much it can carry. So a Mir 250, which is kind of the workhorse right now, can carry 250 kilograms on top of it. But but the thing is, what we're doing here is we're doing what's called a top module that basically has two pins that basically drag a cart, right? So when you're dragging something, you're not putting the weight onto the Mir, right? You're basically dragging it a little bit thing. So what we can do with that is instead of it carrying 250 kilograms right on top of it and putting a lot of weight on there, we can actually put 300 kilograms of weight onto that cart. So actually adding more weight on there. And then basically dragging the payload across, basically it's a cart with four wheels. That's all we're doing. And the Mir just has two pins that basically drag it across. So that's our little trick of basically increasing the capabilities payload of a Mir to drag that. Now, on these new TMS C1500, which is the top module, same principle, two pins that go up there, but we're putting it on a larger Mir platform, Mir 500, which 500, I can drag 800 kilograms with that Mir 500. And with the Mir 1000 or 1350, I can drag 1500 kilograms. So you can see what I'm doing is basically adding more capacity to the Mir by using just a simple technique, which is I'm dragging it across the floor, and that adds a lot of efficiencies and a lot more. Basically, when we just marketed this product, I did a quick thing. I mean, the Mir 250 with the 300 kilograms. I mean, that was a workhorse. I mean, that was what we were doing. Now I can tow 1,500 kilograms with that. It's basically 5 times the payload. At pretty much the cart costs twice the price. I mean, and that is great for an operator who has to say, I've got to move larger products here or more products with just one AMR. So I mean, it's for a lot of these larger manufacturer warehouse, we think it's going to be a game changer just because it's going to be a lot more efficiencies of using that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm trying to understand, I guess, how it works, because you're saying it's pulling. It's essentially pulling it, right? But I think when I saw the picture, it looked like it's like on top. So is it almost like suspended in a way or over top of it?
No, if you can imagine, like, the cart is what we make. Everything on top is whatever the customer wants to do. He can do whatever he wants up there. He can put like a rack up there with shelving. He could put like basically a transmission motor assembly on top of there, right? Doesn't matter, whatever he wants to do. And underneath there, that's basically, it's the Mir or the AMR will basically drive underneath there with the top module. The top module is like the mating kind of docking station almost. And basically it drives underneath that cart. It identifies exactly the legs and how to position itself under there, and it basically drives 2 pins up into 2 inserts into the cart, right? And then that's all it does. It doesn't lift the cart up. It doesn't do anything like that. It just has to engage with them, so docks, and then it drives on its merry way down where it needs to go. That's all, what we kind of engage, that top module that fits on there, and of course the cart that fits on there. And these applications, they basically are free space, what we call free space pickup and drop off. So in your warehouse, you can pick a spot in the warehouse where, you can define where it gets picked up and dropped off in another spot. And you can, of course, when the Mir drops this off, this cart off, you can actually put like handles or almost push carts where an operator can basically take it from that location to wherever it needs to go. So in a lot of cases, what this enables is a lot of remember the old milk runs where somebody had to go get the cart and pick it up from another station? Well, your operators are in one position doing what they're supposed to do, while the Mir is picking up the goods for them and bringing it back there. And that increases what we consider that interoperability from the people that are working there, making it more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes total sense, and it is very smart, the design and how you guys thought about that, and how to expand this already big payload into something more, and bring the offering to more potential use cases as well. And I think it's very interesting, and it'd be interesting to see how people utilize that and kind of come up with new ideas based on that too. So the other new thing they came out with was the TML 200, which is focused more on lifting, right?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that. And when we say lifting, what kind of lifting are we talking about?
All right. So I kind of told you about towing, and towing is
Right.
great, right? I can tow a lot of capacity
Hmm.
across a really good floor, right?
Yeah.
So tell me when there is good floors everywhere in every warehouse. Is that a
Yeah.
known
No.
factor?
No.
Exactly. So this is the big thing, and where we think about it a little bit more is the environment of the warehouse.
Mm,
Now, lifters, it's a simple concept, where I basically am going to lift a pallet up,
mm,
or a box, or I can also lift up a cart and move it from a position. So what I'm
mm.
doing is putting a lot of weight onto the mirror itself, right? So
Okay.
I'm a little restricted to what it can carry.
Mm.
I told you before, a mere 250 can carry 250 kilograms,
Right.
right? So if I lift it, I'm putting all that weight on the mirror. So what does that do is it puts a lot more weight on the mirror, and it engages and allows more traction. So if you're in a
Mm,
difficult environment, right? I'll tell you an example. I have customers in, tier one automotive suppliers that make, like, rubber kind of outlays that create a lot of silicon dust in the air. And silicon
okay.
dust, when it goes on the floor,
Yeah.
it's slick as anything, right?
Oh, okay.
So that's a challenge for, an AMR, which is basically just a robot, a cart that drives around the floor. It can slip if it has too much payload on it, if it's towing.
Mm,
But if you put more weight on it and more traction, it can actually work better in that environment. So lifting is a great thing to solving problems in an environment where it's not very hospitable for towing.
mm,
So that's where the TML 200 comes in. We're basically lifting up a pallet, and we're bringing it to a pallet rack, dropping goods off, like
mm,
raw materials, and bringing it to another station. And that's where, when we have a difficult, floor and environment, that's where it shines a little bit. So,
mm.
Roeq kind of thinks about, the problems. Like I've told you,
Yeah.
this is a problem that comes up in an environment, and in a logistics environment that we kind of look at and think about a little bit more. The AMR guys are great. All right.
Yeah.
They can take that robot and map him from one position to another position.
Hmm.
What we do is we think a little bit more about what are we carrying, and what is it going to do in the things, and what are the conditions
Mm,
that it has to travel in a little bit more.
mm.
So that's a little bit more of where our bread and butter is. So,
Yeah.
and the TML 200 is what I call a Swiss Army knife,
Yeah.
right? It can solve a lot of things. It doesn't carry as much payload, but it can solve a lot of problems that are in that logistics environment.
Hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. And it's a great point that you have about, how you guys are thinking about not only just, getting from point A to point B, but you're taking, the extra step of what's happening in between that point A and point B, and, what's going to happen to that material that you're carrying, and how do you protect it in the best way, or how do you carry it in the best way, and how do you ensure that you can get all of it, or get more of it with a higher payload on there. So really interesting and kind of innovative stuff here. And I love to see, the build on to a platform that's already proven and is already good, and make it even better, which I think you guys are doing. And you're looking really more at the continuous improvement aspect of the logistics world, and really able to kind of tackle some of these individual maybe problems that customers are not necessarily seeing outright, or you don't see when you're looking, high level. But when you start to look at, the actual process and the flow and all these different things, it's really tackling those with these in some cases, what would seem like maybe simple solutions, with a really smart way to prevent any further issues, especially like you mentioned with, the flooring and things of that nature. I mean, it's really important stuff, and you guys are thinking about so much of it.
So what Roeq also does is, software wise, we basically change the footprint once it's engaged on that cart, or lifting a
Ah,
pallet. So we basically increase that, the footprint, so that it safely can drive around those obstacles, taking into account
hmm.
what's on top of it now. So it's not only just like the mechanical or the, a lot of the, the interfaces that we do there, how it fits, or, I told you the pins that can go up or it lifts things, but it's also the software that basically says to the AMR, hey, I got something on top of me and I got to be a little bit more careful, and, I have to do these missions. That's what Roeq's kind of added value to at least the AMR platform is too.
Very interesting. Yeah. I didn't even think about that aspect. I mean, it makes total sense because you are increasing the footprint, like you said, of something. So the robot, in a sense, would not know unless you're changing, like you guys are doing, that hey, I got bigger arms now or whatever, and I've been in the gym lifting, and now I can't get through the door. So yeah.
And everybody, like I said, I always get the question, well, I can put any card on there, right? Well, first you have to map the card out and fit it to the mirror, right? And enjoy that engineering time to do that. I mean, what you get with a Roeq is the card, and the software is already, is basically uploaded. It's basically a setup and a commission, which is a beauty for somebody who goes in and says, I'm going to go buy a mirror and get the Roeq top module, and I'll get the cart solution of Roeq. Basically, everything's set up. He just has to set it up and commission it. Now he can go get his own cart and add it to the top module. But the problem is that's a lot of engineering time that he has to do to basically map that out for him. So that's what we do. And then that's what I mentioned before. That's the standard solution that you get out the box.
Very interesting stuff. And so we talked a little bit about, some of the newer solutions you guys have, but, I'm curious what's next, what's on the horizon for Roeq, and you guys have anything else in the works that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, this year we've brought out those two solutions. I mean, this coming up year, there's a lot of things that we're thinking about, improvements, adding, capabilities on a lot of the top modules. For example, a little point like is, IO, which is basically, imagine if you wanted to put a light tower or warning lights or emergency stops, on top of there because you want to fit in there. So basically allowing the customer to add on to the AMRs on top of there, giving them more flexibility. That's one thing that we're talking about. The future, there's a lot of stuff going on, especially the growth of the AMR market. When you think, 2020, 800 million USD was what they were looking for AMRs for development. They're talking about 2030. It's going to be a $49 billion, industry. Wow. What's going on there? So there's going to be a massive growth curve, and I think a lot of things with labor shortages and supply chain. There's a lot more thought about there. There's a lot of thoughts of what you can do. I think one topic that I bring up a lot is traceability. I think that's going to be a huge thing in a warehouse. Where are goods being placed and done? So that's some things we're thinking about. And engaging. But basically from platforms, what we're doing, we're, conveyor modules that are put on there, you're basically conveying things, or you're lifting pallets, or you're moving carts and things. Essentially, those functionalities are going to stay relatively the same. I think a lot of things with docking stations, where you place things, are going to be the next trend of where you do things, and those are things just where we're thinking a little bit further. And it really depends also on our platforms that we build on there. What are they going to be doing? That's also something we have to take in there. But I think the biggest thing that we want to basically do is we want to basically educate and show the market and say, so how they think about mobile robotic equipment. Usually they buy the AMRs and they say, hey, I'm going to buy a mirror. So what are you going to do with the mirror now? Okay. You got to think about your logistics problem that you're trying to solve. And that's what I'm trying to basically do. And so it's about, when you get your AMR, you got to think about the mobile equipment you're going to be using. And that's key. Really is.
Yeah. Very interesting. And I love the way you guys are strategically thinking about it. And obviously, there's a lot of opportunity there. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, the huge growth curve that's ongoing and coming up pretty rapidly in the AMR market. It would be very interesting to see the different use cases that start to pop up as more companies get into AMRs and start realizing that, this is what they need to do really to address some of the issues we're having in our space. So it'd be interesting to see how Roeq tackles some of those future customer issues and brings solutions to the masses. So Jonathan, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. If people want to find out more information about Roeq and what you guys are doing, how can they do that?
Well, definitely. I mean, if you want to find out more about Roeq, check out our website. Roeq.com. That's definitely a lot of information on there. Reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer a lot of questions. jka@roeq.dk. I'm not .com. We still have the Danish background, so they kept that on there. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. And I get a lot of questions about, how does that work, or how does that application, how do you solve that?
Yeah.
And those things are the most fun. So that's definitely the first resources to checking us out. We're going to be at a lot of shows next year when everything starts opening up. So we're going to be at the Modex show, which is a great show in Atlanta. Stop by, talk to us. We'll be actually showing some of the mirrors with a lot of the TML200 lifter modules and the big cart solutions. So that's a great opportunity right there. So that's just some of the venues that you guys can check us out at. So, and definitely reach out to us, talk to us, tell us your problem. That's basically what we're there for.
All right. Awesome. So you guys are like the robotic therapist. Tell us your problems.
Exactly. Right? That's all I do all day. So what's your problem?
Yeah.
And I'm good with it. I'm happy with it because that's how we get better. We solve those problems.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't explore the problems, you're not going to make any improvements, right? So,
yeah,
very good stuff. And we'll definitely see you at Modex as well. And we'll put all the information on thenewwarehouse.com so people can get in touch with you and find more out about Roeq. So, Jonathan, once again, thank you for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.